Losers of 10 of their last 12 and now 4 games out of a playoff spot and just 1 game over 500. With the trade deadline 2 days away, the Giants should sell, but they should also buy.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and RotoGraphs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, hosting this show for almost 6.5 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. Check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. Super pumped that we made it to 10,000 YouTube subscribers. Thank you so much to each and every one of you. And if you're listening and you're not subscribed, and that's a lot of you, just hit that subscribe button. It's so easy. Thank you so much. And coming up on today's show, like I said, Giants have lost 10 out of 12. They're 4 games out of a playoff spot, and they're reeling right at the deadline, as they seem to do consistently. And so I'm saying they should sell, but they should also buy. So I'm going to explain what I mean by that. And realistically, who am I talking about? Also, is Buster Posey going to make significant additions? These are all key questions as we're like 48 hours away from the trade deadline at the time of this recording. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If you haven't heard, I am leaving this show at the end of this week. And it's just, I don't want to spend too much time talking about myself, but it's just been an absolute pleasure hosting this show for almost 6.5 years. If you want to follow me on social media, see what I'm up to next, at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick on Twitter. I'm also going to activate the blue sky, I swear. I keep saying I'm going to do that. I will do that. And I have a YouTube channel too, at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. Anyway, so the Giants lose again, this time to the Pittsburgh Pirates. And one of the things we could certainly get into is the fact that the Giants are 28-28 against teams that are at or above 500, which is one of the better records in baseball. If you're playing 500 baseball against good teams, 500 or better teams, that is a recipe for success. And you can see it by looking at the team. The Giants have a better record than the Dodgers against 500 or better teams. But the Padres are 9 games under 500 against 500 or better teams. The Tigers, the Cubs are the same as the Giants at 500. The Tigers, who were long the best team in baseball, they're 1 game under 500 against teams at or above 500. So for the Giants, 28, if you told me they're at this point in the season, 107 games in, they're 500 against 500 or better teams, I'd be like, okay, they're probably, 10 games or more over 500 because you beat up on the lesser teams, especially if you're able to hang with the good teams. But no, the Giants are just 1 game over 500 against teams that are below 500. And so, case in point, enter the Pittsburgh Pirates, who came into the game 44-62. They were 13-37 on the road. So almost 1 win, 3 losses. 1 win, 3 losses on average for the Pirates on the road this season. And they come in and win, put up 6 runs. Carson Whisenhunt making his major league debut didn't go great. And then Carson Seymour, another rookie, hanging slider to McCutchen, right? And home run. And the Giants actually, this has been happening a lot. They scored some runs. They put up 5. good fight in the ninth against David Bednar, one of the better closers out there. They did the same thing against Edwin Diaz in Saturday's loss, but ultimately it was all for naught and they lost. And so it puts them in this position where there's, like I said, they've, we call it like, oh, the All-Star break, the halfway, the first half, second half. But all of a sudden, no, I mean, it's not the halfway point. We're well past it. We've played 107 games out here, which is 66% of the season. So we're at the 2/3 mark of the season, almost exactly. And my point is that the Giants should be sellers, but also buyers. And I mean that in a different way than kind of the thread the needle type thing that we've seen and heard of from the Giants in other seasons. I think they should aggressively sell some of their better assets, but also aggressively buy some longer term assets. Like the classic trade deadline acquisition is for a buyer, like a rental player. For example, Eugenio Suarez of the Arizona Diamondbacks is like the top rental player right now. Rental meaning he's a free agent at the end of the year, having a monster season. The Diamondbacks are selling. And so it's just logical. Like the Giants in 2021, they did this with Chris Bryant. They gave up, ironically, Alexander Canario, who was in the Pirates starting lineup last night. So he didn't stick with the Cubs, went to the Mets, now is with the Pirates, and I don't think he's doing great. But that was a classic rental move. But for the Giants, I'm going to make the point that the guys they should be trying to acquire are guys that are under team control for a while, not rentals. And, well, unless the rentals come relatively cheaply. But I would consider it a seller's market because there's a lot of teams that are in contention and not that many teams that are out of it, which is why you make the case, I make the case, others have made the case that they should sell. And so who do they sell? Because to me, the point of selling is not to give up on the season. I think this team is more talented than what we've seen. They are in the midst of what might end up being their worst stretch of baseball of the season. And so we have, obviously some recency bias. Like it's been really frustrating. They've been bad since like acquiring Rafi Devers, which doesn't really make sense. But looking at their lineup, looking at their relative health outside of losing Landon Roop recently, I just feel like they should be better than this. And if you make an addition, especially the type of addition I'm going to advocate for, I could see this team going on a good run over their last 55 games. So 4 back though, you're going to have lots of head-to-heads against San Diego. I believe they have lots of head-to-heads against San Diego. They have 3 coming up in the middle of August. Then they have 4 the following week against the Padres in the middle of August. And then in September, you've got no more Padres actually, but you do a lot of Dodgers. That's not going to be easy. Some Rockies. You got 2 series against the Rockies in September. And you've got the Pirates again on the road coming up. You've got the Nationals at home coming up. So I don't see them like full on selling, but there are players that I think they should sell. And specifically, I think the 2 guys who stand out the most to me are Camilo Doval and possibly Casey Schmitt. And that means you're not taking away from your minor league system, which, in some ways you'd rather trade guys who are unproven. But Casey Schmitt and Camilo Doval have real trade value, and yet they're not necessary pieces on the Giants. I love them both in their own individual ways, but they could replace those guys. They have a really strong back end of the bullpen without Doval. They have kind of a need at second base, even with Schmitt, even though he's got a lot of upside. So I'm going to discuss what I mean what these guys could fetch, and then why they should also buy in just a minute and before we get into it. Today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Game Day Hue, and so is this hat that I'm wearing. For Giants fans like me, this one right here hits the mark. Game Day Hue makes clean, logo-free gear with team-inspired colorways for every pro and college fan base. It's all about letting your colors speak for you. No giant logos, just smart, versatile style that works on game day, on the course, or anywhere in between. This hat pairs perfectly with my usual gear. Look at how well it goes with this shirt I'm wearing. It doesn't replace my team's logo stuff. It just adds to the lineup. It's the kind of hat that reps your team without screaming it. Subtle, but it still says everything. And it's not just hats. Check out their split shade gloves. If you're on YouTube, you can see this. I love this golf glove. It's beautiful, bright orange. Goes with Giants colors, obviously. Made for the golf course, or the perfect gift for the fan who has everything. Right now, you can get 15% off with code MLB15 at GameDayHue.com. That's GameDayHue.com. The code even stacks on bundle deals, so now's the time to load up. Let your colors talk, because colors speak louder than words. That's GameDayHue.com, code MLB15. Okay, here we go. I'm going to continue to make the argument that I think the Giants ought to trade some valuable pieces that they have in Camilo Doval and possibly Casey Schmitt. Those are the guys I'm circling. I would hate to lose them both, but I'm going to explain why I think it could make sense. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow we'll be breaking down Game 2 and or any rumors or moves that happen. This is trade deadline season. The trade deadline is Thursday afternoon, and the Giants don't play on Thursday, so we've got a game tonight, a game on Thursday or Wednesday, and then that's it before the deadline. So hopefully the Giants can go out there and win them both. You got Verlander going tonight. We'll see how that goes. You got Bailey Falter. It says Falter. I believe that's Bailey Falter. I thought he was on the Phillies, but probably not anymore. Let me just make sure I'm not insane. Yeah, he was on the Phillies, but now he's on the Pirates, and he will be making the start. Comes into the game with a 3.82 ERA. Great. Left-handed pitcher, so we'll see the Giants potentially struggle against another lefty. That'll be fun. All right. So we'll get to that tomorrow. Actually, the next game is early, so I'm actually unsure if it'll come out before or after the game. And then, of course, we'll have you covered for the trade deadline on Thursday, and if any moves get made in between. But the case for trading Camilo Doval is simple. It's that high-end relievers are sought after in a big way. Like contenders who have shaky bullpens are just like drooling over the chance to get their hands on a guy like Camilo Doval. And yet on the Giants, I think most Giants fans who follow this team closely would say he's expendable. Why is he expendable? Because you have Randy Rodriguez putting up an elite season, like 120 ERA, 230 fielding or 230 expected ERA, 187 fielding independent pitching, strikeout rate 36%, elite. So you've already got another elite arm, and Doval has had his ups and downs, and we know struggles with command at times. Also, Ryan Walker, who replaced Doval last year as a closer and was really good. This year, the ERA isn't great, but the peripheral numbers are very good. And so I fully expect a rebound performance moving forward for Ryan Walker, like from this day forth. Like there's no reason, I don't see anything that would lead me to believe there's any issue with Ryan Walker. And then how about Tyler Rogers, who's just an unsung hero? I don't understand anybody who criticizes Tyler Rogers. He's just consistently excellent. career ERA is 2.75 now in almost 400 innings. So this whole idea that he's like a gimmick and teams get used to him and then they hit him is just nonsense. Keeps the ball on the ground to a ridiculous degree. Average launch angle against him is negative 4.4 degrees. So people just hit the ball in the ground. And 147 ERA this season. And he throws a ton of innings. So with those three at the back end, like, you could kind of not miss a beat with losing Camilo Doval. And yet, high-end relievers, and not just rental relievers, Camilo Doval, and again, I'm not like saying, oh, I want this guy off my team. What I am saying is, the Giants need to accumulate some talent, whether it's major league talent, maybe you bring Doval in and get somebody who plugs right into some other area of need, or you bring in a, pretty good prospect package. So Doval is under team control through 2027. And so he's 28 years old. Yeah, an acquiring team would have him for this year and then the next 2 seasons. And so there's value there. There's real value there. Doval, just to check on the numbers, 3.15 ERA, 3.31 fielding independent pitching. The walk rate is high. It's 12.8%. That's going to concern some teams. But at the end of the day, it's a 3.30 career ERA, a 3.19 career fielding independent pitching. It'd be hard for a team to really try to lowball the Giants. I mean, Doval is just a really good reliever, has his struggles at times, but a lot of teams, if you're desperate for relief help, this is a very attractive target. And one of the top relievers on the market, Emmanuel Clase, potentially on the market, of the Guardians, has just been placed on paid administrative leave for suspicion into, I want to word this correctly, but his teammate had the same thing happen. It's administrative leave amid MLB's sports betting investigation. And it has to do with like throwing pitches outside of the strike zone, potentially on purpose for betting reasons. So forget him about a trade as a trade candidate. So that boosts the value of a Camilo Doval because it takes one of the top end potentially available relievers off the market. And then when it comes to Casey Schmitt, it would be more difficult to lose him, and they would definitely have to replace him, whereas I don't feel like they would have to replace Doval in the bullpen. That's how good I think their bullpen is. It gets a little less good at the back end, but there are guys like, Hayden Birdsong could potentially come up and be a reliever. Sean Jelly could get called back up. Like, there are guys they have that they could use to fill in that bullpen, losing Doval. But to lose Casey Schmitt would be tougher. So, however, I'm not sure that Schmitt would necessarily even have more trade value than Doval. So the reason I'm talking about Schmitt is because I think that he has, as somebody pointed out in a recent mailbag episode, potentially some of the highest trade value on the Giants. And yet he is, I don't want to say he's wasted at second base, but ideally a team would take him on and have him be their everyday third baseman of the future. He's under team control through 2029. So if you gave up Casey Schmitt, this is the kind of player I feel like, yes, the Guardians have a really good third baseman of their own in Jose Ramirez. And so maybe the fit's not perfect there, but like, if you packaged a Casey Schmitt with like a Hayden Birdsong or something, you could get some of these better players who are out there, in my opinion. Maybe a Carson Wisenhunt, not all three, but you've got the players to make a move. But in return, I think the Giants would want someone who has multiple years of team control remaining. Someone like the guy I think may be the best fit of all when we look at who's available on the trade market. So we'll get into none other than Bay Area local legend Steven Kwan in just a minute, and others. And before we do, all right, as promised, we're going to get into the question, will Buster Posey make significant additions at the trade deadline? He has shown a willingness, or he has shown a tendency to make big moves since he's taken over. I mean, think about it. He got involved in extending Matt Chapman, apparently got the deal across the finish line. He signed one of the consensus top free agents, regardless of how this season has gone, although Willy Adames has been red hot as of late for the last month and a half. Signed Willy Adames to a big contract in the offseason. Justin Verlander's kind of been a bust, I must admit, but big name. And he's traded for Rafael Devers in June. Like, who does that? Nobody does that. It was like unprecedented. And so I just don't see them all out selling, given everything that they've put into this season. And to me, given that, like, you know, when Buster says, like, I believe in this group, we believe in this group, I think I believe in a lot of the players in this group, but I don't believe in all of them being enough. Like, I think you need to make some additions, obviously. Right field stands out, like Mike Yastrzemski. It's just not working out, like, as a impact player at all. If you could add someone in the outfield, yeah, Yaz has now turned in below average offensive numbers, and he's going to be 35 in less than a month, and it's the last year of his contract. And so I don't know exactly how you would do it, but to me, like, Steven Kwan, if the Guardians move him, this is like a big if, but if you told me now that Steven Kwan is going to get traded for sure, I would put the Giants' chances up there among the highest in the game. Why? Because I think he's exactly the type of player that Buster Posey would covet so much, especially on this team that has some guys who can hit for power but also strike out, like Devers and Adames and Chapman, for example, and to an extent Ramos. Ramos is a guy who also hits for average. So is Devers historically. But you've got some power hitters, but what you don't have so much, Jung-Hoo Lee has kind of turned it on lately, but, you know, and his strikeout rate is 10.8%, and he makes a lot of contact. But Steven Kwan is like even more extreme when it comes to making contact and not striking out than Jung-Hoo Lee. And Steven Kwan is an elite outfield defender. And so it would give you options. Steven Kwan is under team control through 2027. So this is a player who you would have for 2 additional years beyond this year. He grew up in the Bay Area. He grew up a huge Giants fan. And so Buster Posey, being the kind of guy he is, like, if you traded for Steven Kwan and said, Steven, what would it take to get you to sign an extension? I think you could get Steven Kwan to sign an extension. And so I don't see them really passing up the opportunity if the Guardians truly make Kwan available. So I'm kind of making a bold prediction here in my last few days at Locked On that the Giants are going to get Steven Kwan. You heard it here first. You didn't probably hear it here first, but I'm making a prediction. I'm calling my shot. And he's a left-handed bat. He's been about league average offensively in his career against lefties, but it doesn't matter because when he starts, like, he's an everyday player because he makes such an impact on defense, and he's also a net positive base runner as well. And if you look at his career batting average, it's 285. Career on base is 357. That is like Buster Posey's dream. Career strikeout rate of 9.5%. In-zone contact rate of 96%. I mean, my goodness. You throw him a pitch in the zone, if he swings at it, he's making contact. And He also doesn't chase, like doesn't have a super high walk rate because he puts a lot of balls in play. Walk rate is a little above average though. And so this is like Buster Posey's ideal complementary player to go along with guys like Devers and Chapman and Adames and to an extent Ramos. Ramos kind of a hybrid where he does hit for a pretty high average, unusually high, and has power. Ramos's strikeout rate is around league average, but 269 average last year and this year. So anyway, that's kind of my hot take, bold prediction. It would take a lot to get Steven Kwan, but also you've got guys like that you could put together. And we didn't even talk about Marco Luciano or Luis Matos as trade candidates, and I think they're both very much on the table as trade candidates. And I don't know how they're valued in the industry. I would imagine not super highly anymore, but certainly they have some trade value as like long-term controllable assets who were former top prospects and haven't really been given like a full run opportunity. And so I would be more than willing to trade Marco Luciano and Luis Matos. And then there's other guys, like I said, with Doval, with perhaps Birdsong, perhaps Wisenhunt. I'm not trading all these guys, but some mix. And then perhaps Casey Schmitt. There's a way to get some of these deals done. And so, continuing to look at other possible fits for the Giants. MLB Trade Rumors just released their top 50 trade candidates list. We had been looking at ESPN. No surprise, Eugenio Suarez comes in at number 1. Mitch Keller, who the Giants kind of roughed up last night, comes in at number 2. Giants would need a starting pitcher as well, by the way. So if you're trading like Birdsong or something, you also need starting pitching. And so if you add a position player with multiple years of team control and you want to add starting pitching, suddenly you're giving up a lot, potentially. But it's going to be very interesting to see what the Giants do. I just don't expect them to like stand pat. I don't expect them to sell. And I don't really expect them to just fully buy either. Because maybe you have to give up a lot to get what you want, but then you have some guys who are expendable like Doval where you could maybe replenish some of that talent. I was thinking of like a 3-team trade. I forget. I think I was considering like Robbie Ray and as a way to get Steven Kwan, because Kwan is more of a long-term play anyway. But if you're trying to contend this year, then you're not moving Robbie Ray. But moving on in MLB Trade Rumors list, they've got Sandy Alcantara, David Bednar, who we also just saw, a reliever closer for the Pirates, Edward Cabrera, good right-handed pitcher who we saw earlier this season with the Marlins, Zach Gallen, and Merrill Kelly. I like both of those guys and their rentals. Merrill Kelly makes a lot of sense. He's just been like a nemesis for the Giants and pitchability guy, and Gallen is having a down year. Luis Robert, kind of a dark horse, interesting outfield candidate. And beyond that, it gets a little dicey, and I'm not so sure anything would be really truly difference making. Maybe Ryan O'Hearn being an exception of the outfielder, first baseman, DH with the Orioles, but he doesn't hit lefties. So it'd be a platoon situation with like Flores at DH or something, or first base. I don't know exactly how they would roll with that. I'm not sure he's the perfect fit. I like Kwan and I like a starter. That's, to me, that's the target. That's the goal. And hopefully that's what the Giants get done. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Things are going to change. We'll be back. Thanks again for listening and making Locked On Giants your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB, on YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Once again, I'm Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter or X at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. I'm also going to reactivate Blue Sky, so be on the lookout for me on there. I'll let you know what the username is before I finish my last episode here. I also have a YouTube channel at Ben Kaspick, or just Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. So I can't really get into what I'm going to be up to next, but that's where you can find out, especially on Twitter. If you have one, check me out there. Follow me if you have not already. And anyway, we got more coverage. We got 3 more days, and we've got a trade deadline coming up. So we're very locked in here at Locked On Giants, and I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening. Today, you are now Locked On Giants.